Hey guys, DMS3TV here. Today I want to do a quick little video on mastering tracks. Now this specifically is going to be for like hip-hop, EDM, things like that. I'm going to be going not for like the crazy super loudness mastering that I feel like ruins a lot of tracks. We're going to be keeping a little bit of dynamics, but we do want to push this track a little bit forward. We're not going to let it clip or anything like that, but we do want it to be a little bit more punchy, a little bit more loud all throughout the mix. And we're going to do a few other things just to kind of, you know, give you guys an example of what you can do when mastering your own stuff if you're working in like hip-hop or EDM, if you're doing instrumentals for vocalists, things along that line. I want to kind of explain what mastering is. Now mastering, this isn't the exact reason why they call it that, but mastering, a good thing to remember is mastering, you only work on the master track when you're mastering. You're only working here with your output. So anything in your mix, now these are individual files. This was sent to me by an artist on another Discord. I'll put a link to his stuff down below, and he was like, hey, can you master this track for me? I said, sure, why not? So I've done just a couple things to it. So this is actually just, like I said, an individual track. All these are just different channels that have been mixed together, so nothing to worry about there. All we're going to be really messing with is right here on the master output. So good practice. Now this does have a low pass on it because it builds up right here. You know, I'll go on and play it so you guys can hear it. Okay, so you can tell we're already getting decent levels out of this as far as our peak levels are concerned, but we want to kind of bring everything else up just a little bit, add a little bit more punch to it, and make it just a little bit more alive and a little more leveled out, so it'd be easier to add vocals on top of something like this. So we don't want to go and like brick wall it or do anything absolutely crazy, and we will carve out, I'm going to show you guys how to carve out just a little bit of space for vocals. So moving forward, it's good practice in general, unless you're doing something with super ultra deep bass, to first start off with a single band EQ and cut off everything under 20 hertz. I mean, some artists even go as high as 35 if you watch Deadmau5's Masterclass, which is a very good class. I highly recommend it. Even if you're not producing EDM, whatever you're producing, it's a very good class to watch if you're a producer. He cuts his stuff off, I think, at 35, but I usually do mine around 20 just because sometimes I like to go a little bit lower in my lows. Now what this does is this cuts out, there's sometimes noise that you can't hear that's going to be adding unnecessary distortion, unnecessary levels to your mix, and making it so the overall track is going to be quieter because of things you can't actually hear in your song, and things people are never going to hear unless they're, you know, rocking a crazy sound system or at a concert. So unless I plan on doing something live, I'm going to be rolling off, or not rolling off, sorry, I'm going to be cutting off everything under 20 hertz, maybe even higher depending on the song. So with that out of the way, it doesn't look like we've lost much of anything there, which is good. So the track already didn't have too much down there. I'm going to leave that on there anyway, and I'm going to pull up a visualizer here so we can kind of look and see what we are working with. Now for this, I'm just going to use a channel EQ, because Logic's channel EQ actually lets you see kind of what's going on as far as your frequency range is concerned. So I'm just going to move this way down here and pop it up, and we're going to leave this off to the side just a little bit. I'm going to make this window a little bit smaller, and we're just going to keep an eye on this as it's going. So right now, here's what we're working with. You can see those lows down there. Let's see if those increase any when I turn this off. Maybe just a little bit. Yep, there were some sub-frequencies below that that were starting to kind of move up. So that probably didn't save us much headroom, but it is just a little bit. So that is, you know, kind of nice to keep in mind. So from there, I'm going to throw in a compressor, a very small amount of compression. Now, what the point of this is I'm going to kind of level out the dynamic range, which is your loudest point and your quietest point, between the build there and where the beat actually comes in. I want to kind of bring those a little bit closer together. So I'm going to go for a relatively slow release and a slightly delayed attack. And I'm going to play this real quick to see where my threshold is. Maybe add just a hair of gain in that. And let's see where these sit now. That's a little bit closer. Okay, when you're mastering, a lot of times you'll use some kind of limiter or multi-maximizer. And when you do that, a lot of times certain things can get pushed down in the mix and some things can get pushed up. This is why a lot of times when I'm mixing, I'll mix vocals just barely quieter than I want them, because oftentimes with the multi-maximizer I use, it will push those vocals farther out in the mix. Likewise, this can happen with your super high highs and your lower lows. So with that in mind, I'm going to use a linear phase EQ, and I'm going to put just a little bit of a V shape on this track. Just a little bit, not very much. There we go. Just a small V shape right here. And what this is going to do is when I add my multi-maximizer, and I'll go on and add one real quick so you guys can see what it's doing, but I'm not going to be using this just yet. This is just for the sake of example. I'm not actually going to crunch it this hard. This is, like I said, this is for example here. I'm going to pull my out ceiling down. Okay, as you can see, the mids are starting to pull out more. We can see more mid-range is starting to come through here, and that's what it's compressing. I'm going to reduce the priority just a little bit on the lows. I think I want to give that just a little bit more of our upper mids right here. But not too much, because around the 3K range is where we start to pick up vocals. So I'm going to pick this up just... Oop, wrong one. I'm going to pick this up just a hair and maybe dip this right back down a little bit right here and make sure that our bell up here, make sure our top up here goes right back in. There we go. That brings a little bit more life to it. Now, I also want to add an expander to it. I know it's going to sound weird adding a compressor and then an expander, but this can kind of, in some cases, help kind of flush out your upper mid-range, and we want to do that without overcrowding it because we still want to have a gap in there for vocals. So if someone adds vocals in over this, depending on the vocalist, of course, it usually will pull right into that range really well. So let's see what we get here. I'm actually happy with that at the stock settings. Cool. And lastly, I do want to add a de-esser, just to be safe. There you go. As you can see, the de-esser only cut on for a split second, but that can cut out some really harsh sounds that you get occasionally in your mix. Now, I am going to go in and I'm going to tune this multi-maximizer just a little bit, and I'm going to open up also at the very end here a level meter just so I can really easily see what my final output is without just relying on this plugin. Now right now this is starting to attenuate on my kicks, which is actually what I want, which is why I added a little bit more of my kick frequencies, a little more highs, those lows and highs, so that those would attenuate sooner and I wouldn't lose them in the mix. You know, having these attenuate just a little bit, it will reduce attack slightly, but it still allows them to be present. If I was just to leave those flat and then just start pulling down my threshold, it's a lot easier for the mids to pull up and easily just lose your lows and your highs right into the mids. Alright, and now I'm going to listen real fast to see what it sounds like without any of these plugins enabled, and we'll visualize it here as well. As you can see here, we're pushing about the same peak levels as we are after this mastering chain. Now look, we'll pull it right back up here. And look at that, right there. Now this was a really quick master. Obviously, if I was doing this for a gig or something, I'd put a lot more time into it. I'm really gonna go back. I am gonna make sure I, take my time, do this properly before I send it off to someone. And obviously, there is no perfect mastering chain. A lot of these things, I just tried to kind of show you guys a little bit of all the different random tools that I do use. There's plenty of other things that you can use and plenty of things that you sometimes don't need. Sometimes all you need on a track is a little bit of EQ, you know, a compressor and maybe a limiter, and that's it. Sometimes all you need is just a multi-maximizer. Sometimes you don't need any EQ at all. Sometimes all you need is compression, things like that. It is sometimes helpful to have some sort of limiter at the end just to make sure you're not passing over a ceiling and getting into distortion ranges. But as you guys can see, the track is still dynamic. We're not, you know, we're not dipping into just like flat out sausage fattener ridiculous flat lines. We have a relatively dynamic mix that's louder and peaks around -5 decibels, which is what I would consider, you know, decent, a decently well-mastered track. You don't want to be pushing things to the max. You don't want to be, you know, always in the red, stuff like that. I can't stand tracks that are mastered that way. And this gives you just a little bit of headroom for in the future if you want to, say, market your instrumentals to someone who is doing vocals. That way, you know, let them push it a little bit harder. You can easily layer vocals over something like this and then compress it a little bit more if you need to. Or, you know, if you have the option to, it's usually better to go on and add your vocals in before doing the mixing stage. And if you guys like this, I will actually do a video on mixing as well as other maybe other producing techniques, you know, like synthesis, how to do all your drums, samples, you know, whatever. So, and let me know what you guys thought about this video. This is something a little bit different for me. I'm going to be branching out, possibly covering some producing gear, as well as possibly doing some news. I've thought about this, and recently I did that news video on the M1060 since they're back. A lot of people seem to like that, and I've thought about maybe just doing like tech news in general, just kind of on the side, maybe as a third video a week, or maybe bi-weekly. So, you know, let me know in the comments about that too. I did a straw poll on my Discord, and a lot of people seem to like the idea. So maybe that'll be a thing. Who knows? But anyway, I really appreciate you guys stopping by, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.